You're listening to the Author Stories Podcast, bringing you the story behind the stories and the storytellers.
Margaret White,
Terry Brooks,
Sheena Kamal,
Matthew Quick,
JT Ellison,
Walt D. Williams,
Brad Ford,
Corey Doctorow,
Brandon Sanderson,
Robin Mom,
Ernest Klein, Jim Butcher,
Sherwin Harris.
Visit hankgarner.com for archives of all the shows. Today's guest is Well, thanks for joining me again for the Author Stories Podcast, where I bring you the story behind the stories and the storytellers. Today, I'm really excited to have Katie Tallo on the show with me today. She has a phenomenal new book, and this is a must-read for your summer reading shelf. It's called Dark August, and this is a page-turner that had me guessing all the way through, which is, my favorite kind of book. Welcome to the show, Katie.
Thank you so much for having me, Hank.
I'm excited to have you. We begin each show with the same question, and that question is, what is your first memory of wanting to be a writer or storyteller?
Oh, that's interesting because I'm not sure I'm one of those people that ever really knew they wanted to be a writer. Writers often say that I always knew I wanted to be a writer, but I wasn't really that kind of person. And I wasn't a big reader, which drove my, well-read British mom a little crazy. But partly it's because I'm a slow reader. When I do read, I really relish words and, I like to go over and over them and so I can really hear them almost. And partly because I loved just as a kid, climbing trees and playing outside but I have to say storytelling, maybe not writing, but storytelling has always been something that I've done. And I guess earliest memory would be this toy farm set that I had, which I played with endlessly telling stories, which were, never about farms. They were reinvented, that the animals were in a prison or the animals were on another planet or, I just created stories and I often created stories for my friends to act out. We loved acting and make believe. And so I guess that farm set is sort of my storytelling beginnings. And I think I only truly wanted to be a writer later in life when I decided to write novels and make a decision that wasn't career-oriented or job-oriented, just do this thing that I kind of think I might love doing.
That's the reason I ask that question the way I do, is because we all come to this differently, and but at the core, storytelling is what reigns supreme, and we all have different expressions of that, and I love to hear those. You were a bit of a theater kid, weren't you?
I was really determined from the age of about 6 to be an actress. And I, was constantly acting and being very loud and being told to be quiet and putting on plays and, going to theater camp. And even through early high school, I was in theater class, and just that kind of went away during high school. There was a bit of self-consciousness that crept into my psyche, and acting kind of fell by the wayside. But I loved, films and movies. And I remember seeing Grease when I was quite young and thinking, those people look like they're having a lot of fun making that movie. And it was the first time I'd actually thought about that, not just, I love this story, but they look like they're having fun making it. And so I got into filmmaking.
This the storytelling aspect of your life just grows and grows. That's from someone who wanted to be an actress to someone who wanted to tell the story behind the scenes. You studied English and film in college, right?
In university, yeah, I studied. I have a BA in film and English, and I studied a lot of Southern American writers, and which I think has had a lot of influence on my writing. And I also studied films, and so then I went to college after that and took TV broadcasting, where we got our hands on cameras. It wasn't just theory anymore. And I really loved that. I love directing, and I'm kind of a bossy person, so have been told that. And so bossing people around, bossing actors around was actually better than being the actor. So, and it was all part of make believe. I could write a story and see it come to life. And that was really fascinating. And that kind of, I started writing screenplays, and the writing kind of came along with the filmmaking. It wasn't so much that I sought to be a screenwriter, but to get films to direct, I had to write them. And the kind of two things started going hand in hand. And I had a fair bit of success in my early career with that.
You said that studying Southern American writers had a big impact on you. How so?
Well, I just connected with them. And I think it's partly because I took the course. You start to read a set of books that you've never been exposed to before, William Faulkner and Carson McCullers. And there were just parts of the language and the landscape and the beauty of that part of the world that I connected with somehow. And I'm from Canada, so I don't know what that connection is. But, I live in Ottawa, which is a very extreme climate. We have minus 30, this is Celsius, in the winter. And, I guess in Fahrenheit, it would be around 100 degrees in the summers. So I know those hot summers, those hot, sticky, humid summers of Southern American writing, and just Carson McCullers, I've always loved The Ballad of the Sad Cafe. And more recently, I've discovered James Lee Burke, who I absolutely adore. And I think James Lee Burke, what I really connect with in his writing is, and what appealed to me about his writing was the darkness of his stories, the sort of tragic depth of them, and there could be something really horrific going on amidst this absolutely stunning landscape that he seems to so connect with. And the way he describes sunsets and where he lives, he's obviously a man of the land, and I connected to that a great deal. I think in another life I lived in the country. I don't know.
I love how place can almost become a character in certain writing. Certain genres tend to really bring that out. There's something about the Southern Gothic stories with the heat, the humidity, the way that permeates everything about the story. And I completely understand what you mean. And I can see that influence in Dark August. Dark August, right, right. Dark August was not the first bit of fiction that you wrote, though, was it?
No, as I said, I'd written some screenplays, but I also had written. I was reading when I decided I wanted to tackle a novel, a bit of a longer format than screenwriting. I was reading at the time Stephen King's book called On Writing, and I decided to sort of take his approach. And he, just to sort of launch myself into let's try a novel, he says, stick your characters in a situation and see what happens. And, not too much outlining, not too much, just kind of go. And I had an idea, a car crash in the middle of nowhere, a man's trapped in the driver's seat and a woman's trapped in the trunk. What does this all mean? Go, kind of thing. And I entered into, I wrote this story, and it turned out to be from his point of view, stuck in the front of the car, and her point of view, and they had a long-term relationship, and it flashed back, because I've always also been fascinated with time in a novel and in our lives, and how you can kind of write in the present but slip into the past, yet it still feels like you're there. You can still write it in the present tense in a sense, because when we go in the past, we are there. Right. And so I wrote this manuscript, and I entered a novel contest because I had no idea what I had. I didn't know if this was a novel, if this is how you write novels. I had just been very free with it, and with the form, with everything, and not following really any how to write a novel, courses or books. I just wrote one. And so I entered a novel contest for unpublished women writers in the UK called the Mislexia Novel Competition in 2013. And I ended up actually winning that contest out of a couple of thousand entries. And that really gave me a little bit of validation. And I thought, okay, I think I can do this. And I ended up actually signing with a really fantastic New York agent because of that manuscript. And, you know, even though it never got published, it really did hook me on novel writing. And so I decided to write another one, and that's Dark August.
Noveler is the best way to write a novel. Why? Quite simply because we've made it the easiest place to do it. Writing a novel is hard enough. Noveler takes care of all the logistical bits of writing a novel, just leaving that small matter of the words to you. It's a clean, beautiful writing interface with writing analytics, goals and streaks, advanced grammar checking, version control, day, evening, and night modes, and many other features designed to take all the stress out of writing. Tell us what you need and we'll build it. Together, we'll build a better tool. With a design-led approach, all the right tools that you need, Noveler saves all your words constantly, allows you to manage and order your novel easily. It's accessible from any device, desktop or mobile. It syncs to Google Drive and Dropbox. It allows exports in various formats, including ebook and more. It also has nice touches like allowing you to write both offline and online, unique for a web-based platform. Everyone needs help with their writing, from inspiration through to grammar checking, so we're doing our best to provide that support. We integrate that support directly into Noveler. Our advanced grammar checker powered by Pro Writing Aid does everything from spell check to style advice. Our writing courses include the incredible Tim Clare's Couch to ADK. We're really excited to offer all Author Stories listeners 30% off Noveler for a whole year. And it doesn't matter if you choose to sign up for the monthly or annual plan. You'll get 30% off. All you need to do is use the discount code HANK when you sign up. Noveler, N-O-V-L-R. That's noveler.org. So in writing this book, and the kind of free-form nature that the writing process took for you, when you finished it, did it have the shape of what you submitted, or did you then do like some revision passes and like what was the revision process like for that book?
Well, it was a first draft, and my first drafts are really bad. I like to say that because I don't have a problem with that. I accept it fully going into the process, you know, and I have to, or I won't keep going. I have to kind of push on and move forward, or I'll continually be rewriting that first paragraph. You know, so I push forward, I do a really crappy first draft, and then I shape it and shape it and shape it with multiple drafts, trying to go through those very quickly because I need to see the big picture while focusing on the minute. And so that's really tricky with a couple of 100 pages. But I have readers that I tend to, my friends and family that I tend to show the book to. But I also got the assistance of I found a gentleman online called the Novel Doctor, and his name is Steve Parolini, and he's terrific. And he gave me some wonderful notes. And he was a person who didn't know me, didn't know the story, and it was a great a fresh set of eyes to look at the story and give me some new notes. And I took some and I left some by the wayside, but it was always helpful to have all that feedback. And of course, my agent gave me tons of notes as well. And we went through multiple drafts on that, as with the current novel as well.
Speaking of, I know exactly what you mean about taking feedback from some people. Some of it is helpful, some of it is not helpful, and you leave some of that on the wayside. I think, I think new writers a lot of times will fall into two pitfalls, and one of those is not taking any feedback from anyone, because this is my art, and it's a full expression of what I meant to say, and while that's all true, feedback can be very helpful. There are blind spots that we just can't see. Other people's perspective is always helpful. And then
So, yeah.
But then the other pitfall that new writers will fall into is taking everyone's advice, and then you wind up a lot of times with a novel by committee, and it can just really get away from you with too many cooks in the kitchen. How do as a new writer, how did you balance that taking valid input from someone, but then feeling that this was a piece of advice that would not be the best thing for your novel?
It's kind of something I've been doing for a long time with screenwriting. Filmmaking is really collaborative, and it's not you alone. It's a little different from writing novels. You're often collaborating right from the beginning on something, and you're getting a lot of feedback. You develop a very thick skin, and you kind of put your ego off to the side. And I went into novel writing thinking, I'm really new to this. I'm not going to be offended by any comment. I'm just going to see what people offer me. And I looked for feedback from specific people, first of all, that I respected in terms of the work they had done or their perspective on life. And then if there was a really consistent note that everyone was giving me, I really looked hard at it. Even if I disagreed with it, I took a good hard look at it, because those notes often, it's where I had to really wrestle with something. But often the people that if it's a consistent note, it's usually right. But I just kind of have to, I always came back to kind of, what am I doing with this story? Why am I telling it? What does it really mean to me? Is this me? Does this feel true to me? And again, in screenwriting, the hardest thing was not to write a scene like a scene you'd seen in a movie. And so with novels, I kind of took that same advice, and I'm not writing it to write it like another novel. I'm writing it to, is this resonating as a truth for this character, as a truth for me? Can I put myself in this situation and it feels like it makes sense? And yes, I don't know if that answers it, but some notes I took and some I didn't. But I also have to say, I've been working, I found the novel world, the world of books, is such a respectful world of writers. And from my agents to my publishers and editors, they have all been so respectful. And any note they've ever given me, they've said, yeah, but you're the writer, so you decide. And if it's not right for you, don't do it. So I've been given a lot of flexibility and a lot of great feedback. And so I think the two have these are all experienced people. So I've listened to what they've told me.
Right. Well, it sounds like from what you've described of that first novel, and then in reading Dark August, it sounds like you are a real fan of mysteries and thrillers. What is it about this genre that intrigues you?
I don't know. I think I've just always had a little bit of a dark side, and I think that's where, I've made films that were really dark and had some horrific stuff in them, and I've made some super sweet films, coming of age stories. I think there's a little bit of the sweet and the dark in me, and I think that's okay. And that's kind of where mystery thriller is. And I love good characters and I love good stories. And I feel like mysteries and thrillers just are that genre for me. Those twists and turning points and moments of intensity. I just love that. And I love writing that. I'll scare myself sometimes if I'm writing late at night and nobody's home. I have to kind of pull it together. I start freaking out if I'm writing a scary scene, The other day I'm writing a sequel to Dark August, and I was writing a scene, and I had to laugh because I was getting so excited because the scene suddenly took a dark turn that I wasn't expecting. And it was as if it was out of my hands. And I just went, oh, I couldn't believe it. And I couldn't type fast enough.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Katie, during this process, with the first book and getting the agent and all of that, when that book is finished, there's a lot of work around getting a novel out to the world or trying to shop it and all of that. But if, writers, very seldom can let their creative mind just be fallow ground. So in that process of trying to get one book out, the new book inevitably creeps in. What was it first about Dark August that came to you? Was it the character of Gus? Was it a situation? What's that first kernel of an idea that usually comes to you?
It can be an idea, but in this case, it was a character. A couple of decades ago, I wrote a screenplay that never became a film. It was just one of those that didn't, end up being a film, and it was called Gracie's Kiss. And it was a really strange story about a woman who had this fondness for turning roadkill into her little taxidermied friends. And this strange character, she was this little sweet outsider from a little town of Elgin, Ontario, and she kind of stuck around. She just kind of hung around in the shadows. I always loved the screenplay. It got a lot of great feedback. And as in the film world, just, people pick something up and then it goes by the wayside, and it kind of garnered interest and then it didn't. And so new projects came along, but she kind of always stuck around. And I think when she started to come back to me was when I was thinking of a second novel. After that first one, when I was thinking of the concept for Dark August, she was the starting point. And I reimagined elements of that original screenplay, but created an entirely new lead character that wasn't as weird as Gracie, somebody a little more relatable. And so the writing of Dark August began with that character. And then elements like the town of Elgin and her little taxidermy friends worked their way in there, but a whole story kind of just evolved around her, as they just do. They kind of appear to you. I don't know how.
Isn't that funny? World Anvil is a browser-based world-building platform designed for all world builders, writers and novelists, dungeon masters, game developers, and everyone else. World Anvil keeps your world setting safe and organized, helps you find your characters, locations, plots, timelines, and maps quickly and easily as you write. Then, if you choose, you can showcase your amazing world building to the world, beautifully and interactively, to keep your readers engaged. You can even use our professional tier to build your career selling access to behind-the-scenes content your readers will love and growing your community. Build your world setting in any genre with over 25 custom-built world-building templates, complete with prompts to inspire your creativity. Allow your readers to explore the public parts of your world in an innovative new way with interactive maps, timelines, and wiki-style articles. Give special access to co-authors, beta readers, customers, or patrons to see exclusive behind-the-scenes content. There's a free version to get started with all of the major features. Guild membership offers you a host of extra options, including comprehensive privacy settings, co-authors, presentation options, and so much more. Join our community of over 800,000 world builders, including professional authors. Take part in competitions and learn more about world building at this fantastic online community. Use the coupon code HANK to get 20% off all 6 and 12-month subscriptions. WorldAnvil.com. I'm a recent convert, and I know you will be too. Did you have an idea of what this book would become?
No, and in fact, my writing process up to that point had been quite free and wild and, kind of all over the place. And this time I realized I hadn't written a novel, a large format mystery. And so I had to kind of plan it out a little more than the first one. So there was a lot of outlining and a lot of decision making around the plot. And in that process, in writing out cue cards and figuring out where I very much structure things like a screenplay. There's sort of 3 acts, and there's in a very loose way. and there's turning points, and there's, catalysts and all these terminologies used in screenplays. But I started to plot out this novel on cue cards. I have to see, I'm a very visual person, and I have to see things. I have to see the novel right in front of me at all times. And so I have this giant bulletin board with cue cards all over it, all color coded based on different characters or plot lines. And it's just kind of, I can then move them around, and then it evolves from there. I have a thought in the middle of the night. I'll write it down on a piece of paper and stick it on the board where it belongs the next day. Or, I'm walking in the park and something comes to me, and I come back and I can readjust things. And so the story just kind of starts to grow and grow and grow. And I was telling my daughter the other day that it's almost like sculpture in some ways. You have this big blob, and you kind of massage it and work it and manipulate it around until it starts to really look like something. And that's kind of where I started with Dark August.
With your first novel being, more free form written, and Dark August, it seems was more intentional, at least in the structure and kind of your vision for the story. You knew what that was going to be from the beginning, so you were more intentional in certain things. Did some of the things you learned from the first book, writing more kind of Stephen King, writing into the dark, pantsing a bit, did some of that, the things that you learned from that first writing experience come into this one?
Yes, very much so, because I think that first one allowed me to kind of be free with a moment in a story. And so even if I have a structure, even if I know this is the order of the scenes, I always call them scenes, not chapters, but even if I know the order, I don't necessarily I'll let it play out that way, or it doesn't let itself play out that way. So it's almost freedom within the form, in a sense. I'll say, okay, I'm going to write the scene where Gus walks in to visit this old woman at an old age home to find out something. And as she walks in, I know she's going to walk in, I know she's going to meet the woman, but things evolve and change, and what they say to each other changes. And it's just knowing the big picture of where you're headed, so that it isn't a huge chaotic mess, but being really free with the moment. And if something really like I've changed the fate of some characters completely in the middle of, writing it. Now that's a domino effect. So that's a little dangerous, but sometimes it's for the better of the story. So let's tell the readers a little bit about Dark August and what the story is. We've got this character, Augusta Monet, or Gus, as we come to know her, and she is, she's got this boyfriend who, God love him, anyway, yeah, she winds up going home. What's the draw for Gus to kind of be drawn back into her old life? Well, her great grandmother dies, and so she inherits a house and ends up, ditching said loser boyfriend and, going back to her hometown. And there's this rundown old house. There's an even more rundown old dog named Levi. And, there's this past that she has sort of been trying to escape. And so I guess the draw, to answer your question, is her mother. Her mother's dead, but it was never really reconciled for her. And in this old house, she finds her old trunk of her childhood, toys and various things, but hidden amongst them are documents and photos that belong to her mother. And her mother was a police detective. And so before her mother's death, her mother was obsessed with this missing persons case that went cold, and these documents belong to that cold case. And so Gus starts to recreate her mother's evidence wall from memory, because she saw it as a child, and kind of guided by her mother's voice, she finds this new purpose in life, and she's going to pick up where her mother left off and solve this cold case that her mother left behind and somehow bring closure to her mother's death. At least that's her intention. And this is a death that left her reeling since childhood. But by digging into this evidence, she connects with her mother again, and she also stirs up this long forgotten missing persons case. And she uncovers this whole conspiracy of deception that awakens the wrath of a few very dangerous people, and who would prefer that the past was left dead and buried. And so there are people after her, and there are secret tunnels, and there's an explosion that blows an entire town off the map. There's a smoking gun with only one bullet in it, and not to mention a few taxidermy surprises, from Gracie. And there's also this amazingly sweet old dog at the heart of the novel, who goes along for the ride, and he's her sidekick. And he's actually based on my lovely dog, Levi, who unfortunately did not live to see his name in print, but he is immortalized in this novel.
Oh, I love it. This book got me on so many different levels. It's a mystery. It's psychological suspense. We're getting to there's family secrets. When did you know the ending of this book? Because there's twist after twist that almost gave me whiplash in the best way. Did you know where this book was going from the beginning?
In general, yes. And for the most part, there were a couple of big surprises that happened near the ending that were added quite a bit later in the process that I didn't know. They just sort of came to me as divine justice somehow for a couple of the characters. But I think it's tricky, because I can't remember at what stage I had it all figured out, but it's such a process of evolution. And like I said, when I tweak one little thing, that means I have to go back. It's like a house of cards, and it can all fall apart. So thankfully, my wonderful editors were able to catch a few things where I hadn't quite massaged it out when I did change something, but the story really just kind of grew and grew, and the layers kind of grew. I think that's what I most found fascinating. It was a pretty simple story, and then it just grew in complexity.
I know you said you're working on a follow-up sequel for
Yep.
Dark August. Say that 3 times really fast. Did the ending of this book, and I don't want to give away anything for anyone, but did you know that this story would continue when you finished it? Did this set up for, okay, Gus has more story to tell?
No, I don't think so. No, I was writing a complete novel that was a story that had a beginning, middle, and end, and I felt like I had wrapped it up well, and away we go. But
and this is a complete story with no cliffhangers, just to clear that up for everyone. Yeah,
and yet I really missed her, for one, which sounds kind of silly, but I missed the character, and I felt like she had evolved into this person that had grown, and I thought I could do more with her. And it's tricky for me to say anything about the sequel because I'm kind of in the midst of it, and I don't want to give anything away, but I felt like she could continue on in a new path, in a sense, and have a new adventure. And yet I still see her I still see the sequel as the similar genre of amateur sleuth. She's not a certified detective by any means. She's not a police officer. It's still detective novel genre in a way, but totally in the amateur field. And she accepts that. She's super young, and which is what I kind of love about her. She's got that reckless nature about her, so she's okay to walk out in the middle of the night into a field and see what happens.
The new book, Dark August, is available everywhere today. Congratulations on launch day, by the way, Katie. And this book is a must-have on your shelf. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed this book. For all you listeners out there, an excellent new voice that you need to watch in this genre right now. Katie, tell people if they're just learning about you, where they can connect with you online to learn more about you.
I am at katietallo.com, and that's KATIETALLO.com. And I'm also on Goodreads and Instagram and Facebook. I have an author page on Facebook. I'm kind of new to Twitter, so a few more followers would be great. But no, the whole social media thing. It's funny you'd mentioned earlier about the tricky part when you're in the midst of launching a book and in the midst of kind of writing another one, and that dichotomy that you're torn back and forth between loving seeing what's happening with the book and the feedback. So far, the feedback's been so wonderful, and the reviews have been great, and I have to it's almost a distraction from just getting back to the business of writing. But it's all wonderful. I'm so lucky. I really am truly the luckiest person to be being published in this interesting time that we're in.
Well, it's well deserved and hard earned. I'll tell you that. Katie, this has been so much fun talking. We're going to link up the book and your website and all that great stuff in the show notes of this episode for everyone to find. Thank you so much for taking time to come on the show.
Thank you, Hank. It's been really nice talking to you.
You too. Want to grow as a writer and take your writing to the next level? Give Pro Writing Aid a try. Pro Writing Aid is a grammar checker, style editor, and writing mentor in one package. Pro Writing Aid will never replace a human editor. Rather, it helps you self-edit to a deeper level so that when you send it off to an editor, they will be able to focus on the meat of your writing and not spend their time fixing basic writing issues. Pro Writing Aid is the only platform that offers world-class grammar and style checking, combined with more in-depth reports to help you strengthen your writing. Our unique combination of suggestions, articles, videos, and quizzes makes writing fun and interactive. Writing can be grammatically perfect but still feel awkward and clumsy. Pro Writing Aid searches out elements like repetitiveness, vague wording, sentence length variation, over-dependence on adverbs, passive voice, overcomplicated sentence structures, and so much more. Nothing makes a writer lose credibility faster than spelling and grammar mistakes. Submit clean, error-free writing. Go to ProWritingAid.com and use code HANK20 for 20% off of Pro Writing Aid Premium. Pro Writing Aid. Check it out today.